As another explosion shook the ground under Jake Morrison's boots, he felt it. There was a lot of smoke in the air, so it was hard to see more than a few feet ahead. There was a lot of static and yelling on his radio. Command was yelling orders at his unit, telling them to move forward and secure the area. Another day in this never-ending fight against the Krell Empire. Jake took his team through the remains of what used to be a human colony. The red sky made the burned buildings look like broken teeth. 3 days ago, the Krell hit this place hard. Now it was nothing but ash and memories. As he walked between the walls that had fallen down, his boots crunched on the debris. He was ready with his rifle and looked for threats. He saw it then, the place where the crash happened. A huge Krell ship had crashed in the middle of the colony square. The hull was ripped open, and the metal bent like paper. There were still fires in some places, and black smoke was rising from them. Davis, the tough guy who was a squad sergeant, pointed at the wreckage. "Lieutenant, the orders are to sweep and clear. Check to see that nothing is alive in there." Jake nodded his head. Normal procedure. Even when they were hurt, the Krell were still dangerous. But this crash didn't feel right. The ship looked like it cost a lot of money and was important, not like the fighter planes they usually shot down. This one was bigger, nicer, and had gold markings along the hull. He carefully moved closer, gun in hand. The fires were so hot that they made him sweat. His heart raced in his chest. He had learned to trust his gut after 3 years of war, and right now his gut was telling him that something was wrong. Then he heard it, a noise that made him stop. A scream. Weak, in pain, but definitely there. Someone was alive in that wreck. He asked his squad, "Did you hear that?" Davis frowned. "Sir, it could be a trap. Krell are smart. They've used hurt people as bait before." Jake was aware of that. He had seen brave soldiers die when they rushed in to help what they thought were hurt civilians, only to be ambushed. But this noise was different. This wasn't a tactical move. Someone was dying. He got closer to the broken hull and looked inside through a hole in the metal. The inside was a mess of broken equipment and wires that were sparking. Then he saw her. He couldn't breathe. A huge piece of debris pinned her down, and her body was twisted in a way that looked painful. But it wasn't just that she was still alive that shocked him. It was her. He had only seen that color in intelligence briefings, but her scales shone silver even in the dark. The scales of regular Krell soldiers were dark, either brown or black, but silver stood for royalty. And the fancy armor she wore, which was now broken and cracked, proved it. This wasn't just a Krell. This person was important. Perhaps even the queen herself. Her golden eyes opened a little and looked right at him. Those eyes held pain and something else. Fear. She tried to talk, but all she could do was gasp. There was blood, darker than human blood, pooling under her. Davis said urgently, "Sir, we need to move. Krell patrols will soon be all over this area. If they find us here..." Jake's radio made a crackling sound again. Command wanted to know what was going on. They needed to know for sure that the area was clear so they could move the artillery into place. Normal things. But Jake had stopped paying attention. He was looking at this dying woman, the queen of his enemies, and all he could think about was his sister at home, the sister who had been caught in a Krell raid 2 years ago, the sister he could never save. "Lieutenant Morrison, we have to leave." "Now," Davis said, grabbing his shoulder. Jake shook his head. "I can't leave her like this." "Are you out of your mind? She is Krell. She is the enemy. If Command finds out we let her live, they'll kill us. God, they'll court-martial us if we don't finish the job." "I don't care." Jake put his rifle in its holster and began to climb into the wreck. His squad looked at him like he was crazy. He might have. 3 years of war, seeing friends die, and killing people who probably had families just like his. It could be that something inside him had finally given up. Or maybe this was the first smart thing he'd done in a long time. As he climbed through the gap, the metal was hot in his hands. The ship was even worse on the inside than it looked from the outside. There were dead bodies of Krell soldiers all over the place. But the queen was still alive. Barely. He got to her and began to look at the debris that was pinning her down. Davis yelled from outside, "This is crazy. Please don't do this, Morrison. We're all going to die. You get that?" Jake got it completely. He was throwing away his job, and maybe even his life. But when he looked into those golden eyes, he knew he couldn't leave. He just couldn't. He got ready and pushed against the metal beam. It hardly moved. The queen made a noise that sounded like a gasp or a cry. He pushed harder, and his muscles were straining. The beam moved slowly, inch by inch. Finally, it fell over with a bang. The queen wasn't breathing very deeply. Her body was covered in cuts and bruises, and the metal had cut through her scales in some places. He had about an hour to get her to safety, or she would die here. He could hear new sounds outside. Engines. A lot of them. The Krell are on patrol, just like Davis said they would be. They were coming, and they were coming quickly. Jake chose what to do. He bent down and carefully picked up the queen. She was heavier than a woman, and her body was full of muscle under those scales. She didn't fight back. She might have been too weak. Perhaps she knew he was trying to help. He took her out of the wreckage. His squad stood there, weapons drawn, their faces showing shock, fear, and disbelief. "Sir, this is—" Davis began. Jake cut him off and said, "I know what it is. You guys can go back now. Tell command that I turned off. You can tell them anything you want. But I'm not going to let her die." No one moved for a long time. Davis then swore under his breath and raised his gun. "Okay, but we're going with you. Can't let you have all the fun getting court-martialed." The rest of the group nodded. They were loyal, even when their boss was clearly losing it. Jake felt a wave of thankfulness that he couldn't put into words. Davis said, "There's an old bunker network 2 clicks east. From the time of the colonies. We can get there before the patrols if we hurry." Jake nodded. "Let's go." They ran. His arms hurt from carrying the queen's weight, but he didn't stop. The sound of Krell engines got louder behind them. Plasma bolts started hitting the ground around them, sending dust and debris flying. His squad shot back to protect their escape. Tyler, a kid who had only been with him for 3 months, got shot in the shoulder but kept running. There was a dark hole in the ground that looked like the entrance to the bunker. It was half hidden by rubble. Davis got there first and yanked open the rusty door. He dove inside with the queen still in his arms. His team followed and slammed the door shut behind them. Plasma bolts hit the metal door hard, but it stayed closed. They were inside. They were still alive. Jake had just saved the enemy queen's life. He didn't know what would happen next, but there was no way to go back. There was only a small emergency lantern Jake had in his pack to light up the bunker. There was a steady drip of water, somewhere in the dark, that echoed off the concrete walls. The smell of rust and old dirt filled the air. It had been empty for years, maybe even decades. But at the moment, it was the safest place Jake could think of. He had spread his jacket on the floor, and the queen lay on it. She was having trouble breathing, and it looked like each breath took a lot of work. Jake's hands shook when he opened his first aid kit. He had done field medicine before, fixing up injured soldiers while they were under fire. But this was not the same. He didn't know anything about how Krell biology worked. What if he made a mistake? What if their blood couldn't handle antibiotics made for people? But he had no other choice. She was going to die. He tried to stop the bleeding for the first hour. He used all of his bandages to carefully wrap her wounds. Her scales were tough, but the crash had broken them in a few places. In the dim light, the blood looked almost purple and was darker than his. He didn't like how quickly it soaked through the bandages. Davis and the rest of the team took turns standing guard at the entrance to the bunker. They had set up some simple alarms using tripwire and empty cans. They would hear it if anyone came down those stairs. Tyler was sitting in the corner with a bandage on his shoulder. He looked pale but alive. Would she make it? Davis asked quietly as he walked over to check on them. Jake didn't stop working. "Not sure. Maybe, if I don't mess this up." Command has been on the air all day. They want us to check in. They're starting to get suspicious. Let them be wary. Davis let out a sigh. "Jake, dude, what's going on here? We can't stay down here forever. Someone is going to find us sooner or later. And when they do, it won't look good that we have the enemy queen with us." Finally, Jake looked at him. I'll work it out. I just need to keep her alive right now. The first day was the hardest. The queen, whose name he would later learn was Rivara, did not wake up. Her scales were hot to the touch, and her body was on fire. Jake stayed with her, changing her bandages and trying to get her to drink water. He didn't sleep much. He thought about waking up to find her dead every time he closed his eyes. Her fever went down on the second day. Jake was sleeping in the corner when he heard something move. He opened his eyes quickly to see her trying to sit up, which hurt. "Easy," he said as he moved her aside. "Don't go too fast. You might have worse than broken ribs." She looked at him with her sharp golden eyes, even though she was weak. She didn't say anything for a long time. She looked at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Water," she finally said. Her voice was rough, but she spoke English well, better than some people he knew. He held a canteen to her lips. She drank slowly and carefully. She lay back down when she was done, tired from that little bit of work. "Why?" she asked. Jake understood what she was saying. "Why did I save you?" She gave a little nod. He thought about what to say in response. He didn't really know what the truth was either. "I couldn't just leave you there," he said. "Wouldn't be right. I am your enemy. Yes, your people will call you a traitor for doing this. Most likely." She kept an eye on him for a while longer. "You are either very brave or very stupid." Jake smiled a bit. "My mom used to say that too." That seemed to make her more confused than anything else. He thought she had fallen asleep again when she closed her eyes. But then she spoke again, this time in a lower voice. "People from my own group did this." Jake looked unhappy. "What do you mean?" "The accident. It wasn't an accident. Someone messed with my ship." Her voice showed pain that had nothing to do with her injuries. "My council and my own advisors wanted me dead." What would make them do that? He thought she wouldn't answer because she was quiet for so long. When she did, her voice was angry. "Because I wanted peace. This war's been going on for 3 years and has affected both of our peoples. Millions of people have died on both sides. The cities turned to ash. And for what? Land? Resources? Pride." She opened her eyes again and looked up at the ceiling. "I suggested talks. Talks behind closed doors to find a way to end this. The leaders of the military were very angry. They called me weak and said I was betraying our empire. I didn't pay attention. That's why they took me away." Jake sat back and thought about this. Your own people tried to kill you because you wanted to end the war? They care more about power than peace. The war machine eats itself. Generals turn into heroes. Weapons makers get rich. Politicians use fear to keep people in line. She looked at him by turning her head. "Isn't it the same on your side?" He wanted to fight, but he couldn't. She was correct. He had seen it with his own eyes. Officers who didn't want the war to end because they would lose their jobs. Companies are making a lot of money, selling guns and ships. Politicians who use the Krell threat to win elections. "Yeah," he said. "Same on our end." They talked more over the next day. At first, it was just useful things. Jake would ask her about her injuries and what she could eat. She said the taste was awful, but most of his food was safe for her. She wanted to know where they were, what the bunker was, and what his squad was doing. But over time, the talks got deeper. She wanted to know why he had joined the army. He told her about his sister and how he wanted to keep people safe. She told him about how she grew up in the royal court and was trained to rule from birth, with no say in her own life. "Someone else made all the choices for me," she said one night. They were sitting against the wall, eating a protein bar that she said was the worst thing she'd ever tasted. Who I would meet, what I would study, and how I would talk. My own thoughts weren't even mine. I was taught how to think about people. That you were a savage, violent, that you had no culture or honor. And what now? Jake wanted to know. She looked at him in a way that made his heart race. Now I'm curious about how many other things I was taught that weren't true. He felt the same way. 3 years of war had made him think of the Krell as monsters, aliens who were bad and wanted to kill all humans. But while he was sitting here talking to Rivara, he saw someone who was a lot like him. She thought his jokes were funny. She was angry about unfairness. She was sad that innocent people had died. Davis came down on the third night to find them both talking quietly, like they were old friends. He shook his head in disbelief. He said, "This is the strangest thing I've ever seen." Lieutenant Morrison talking to the enemy queen in an empty bunker. Rivara raised an eyebrow, which looked almost like a human gesture. Is it really that strange that enemies could find common ground? 3 days ago, my men and your men were trying to kill each other, lady. Yeah, it's weird. But Davis had to admit, even though he didn't want to, that Rivara wasn't what he had thought it would be. She was smart, had a dry sense of humor, and clearly cared about her people. Jake cared about his, too. Rivara spoke softly late that night, after everyone else had gone to sleep. "Thanks, Jake Morrison. You gave me something I thought I had lost. What is that?" "Hope. Hope that this war doesn't have to go on forever. That maybe there are people on both sides who see the craziness for what it is." She stopped for a moment. "You could have let me die, but you didn't. You saved my life. That is not how a savage race would act. That is respect. Real honor." Jake didn't know how to respond. He just nodded, and the warmth in his chest had nothing to do with how cold it was in the bunker. In the last 3 days, something had changed between them. Something he didn't fully understand yet, but couldn't ignore. They came from different worlds, different species, and were on opposite sides of a terrible war. But somehow, in this cold concrete bunker, they had found something neither of them had expected. Getting it, respect, and maybe, just maybe, the start of something bigger. The 7th night in the bunker was like the others. Jake was cleaning his rifle by the light of the lamp, while Rivara sat nearby. Her wounds were healing faster than he had thought they would. That was an impressive thing about Krell biology. She could move around without pain now, but she still preferred her left side where her ribs were healing. They had gotten into a routine. During the day, Davis and the squad would look around the area for patrols. At night, they would all go to the bunker and share the food they had found. It wasn't a lot, but no one said anything. They were still alive, and for now, that was enough. But tonight was different. Jake saw in the way Rivara kept looking at him, as if she were trying to find the right words to say something important. He had gotten better at reading her face over the past week. The way her scales changed color a little bit when she was deep in thought. How her tail moved when she was scared. "Jake," she said finally, her voice breaking the silence. "I need to talk to you. Privately." Everyone looked up when she said it. Davis looked at Jake with one eyebrow raised. Jake just shrugged. They went to the farthest corner of the bunker, away from the others. Rivara stood tall, even though she was hurt. She looked every bit like a queen. Jake remembered that this wasn't just a refugee he had saved. This was a royal person who ruled over millions of people. "Is everything all right?" he asked. She took a breath, and for the first time since he met her, she looked unsure. "There is a tradition among my people. It's an old one, older than the empire itself." She stopped and thought about what she was going to say. A queen may choose to claim a warrior as her bonded mate if they do something very brave, save a life at great personal cost, or show honor beyond measure. Jake blinked. Her what? Bonded partner. This is the most important thing that can be done. Everyone in our tribe knows it's a sacred bond. She looked him in the eye. "I am claiming you, Jake Morrison." Jake just looked at her for a second. He laughed because she had to be joking. She must have been kidding. But Rivara didn't find it funny. She just looked at him with those golden eyes, very serious. He couldn't laugh anymore. "Hold on, you're not joking." "No, I am not. Rivara, we don't know each other very well. For a week, we've been hiding in a bunker. That's not really the basis for whatever you're talking about, isn't it?" She moved closer. "I know who you are, Jake Morrison. I have seen you take care of your injured. I've heard you talk about your sister and why you fight. I saw you put your job, your life, and your freedom on the line to save someone you were taught to hate. That tells me more about who you are than years of dating ever could." Jake ran a hand through his hair as he tried to figure this out. "Thanks, but this isn't how people work. We go out on dates, get to know each other over time, and," she gently cut in, "I know how people connect. I have learned about your culture. But Jake, I am not a person. And this is how my people do it. A queen takes a warrior when she sees value in them. She has the right to do it and the choice to do it. Okay, but we are not the same kind of people. Two different worlds. Just in case you forgot, our people are at war. I remember. She spoke softly but firmly. You think I made this choice easily? Do you think I don't get how hard it is? She turned away a little and her tail swished. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it for 7 days. What it would mean, how it would look, the scandal, the anger, the political nightmare. So why, Jake wanted to know, why do this if you know all that? She turned back to him, and he saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before, something honest and open. Because I've finally met someone who sees me for who I am, not Queen Rivara from the Krell Empire, not a political piece that can be moved around on a board. Just me. A little bit of her voice broke. Do you know what that feels like? To be a symbol, a title, and a tool for other people to use for the rest of your life? And then to meet someone who treats you like a person? Jake felt something turn in his chest. He thought about the last week and the talks they had in the dark. He realized that she had told him things that are personal. She talked about her childhood, how she felt trapped by her responsibilities, and how lonely her job was. And he had shared more than he had with anyone else in years. He said softly, "This isn't just about tradition, is it?" No. She moved closer again, close enough for him to see the small patterns in her silver scales and how the light from the lamp caught them. The tradition gives me the structure and the words to say what I feel. The feeling itself, Jake, is real, though. I have seen you give up things for people who will never thank you. I've seen you care about someone you had every reason to kill. I have seen you lead your men with loyalty and care. She stopped, and I have felt something I never thought I would. Something I was told queens don't feel. What is that? Link. Real connection with another person. Her hand reached out, stopped for a moment, and then lightly touched his arm. Her skin was cooler than his, and the scales felt smooth under his sleeve. I'm claiming you, but not because it's the right thing to do. I am claiming you because when I thought I would die in that wreckage, alone and betrayed, you showed me that there is still good in this world. And I don't let that go. Jake stood there, his mind racing. This was nuts. Totally crazy. He had been a regular soldier following orders just a week ago. The queen of the enemy now told him she wanted to connect with him, whatever that meant. He was done with his job. It would be even worse if anyone found out about this. But he couldn't just ignore it when he saw the hope and fear in her face. The truth was that he had felt it too. That link she mentioned. Those times in the dark when they talked for hours, told stories, laughed at dumb things, and found things they had in common that shouldn't have been there. He said slowly, I don't get your customs. I don't really know what it means to be a bonded mate. And I'm just a soldier, Rivara. I'm not special. You're special to me, she said simply. Those words hurt him more than any weapon could have. He thought about what his life was like before this, the fighting that never ends, the loss, and the question of whether any of it mattered. He thought about the last week and how he had found meaning in the simple act of keeping another person alive, about finding out that the enemy might not be who he thought he should hate. He said, your people are going to go crazy. YES.MY people too, I think so. IT might make things worse. Everything, the war, the politics. Maybe, she said, tilting her head, or maybe it could show both of our people that there is another way, that enemies can turn into something else. She stopped. But I won't make you do this, Jake Morrison. Even though tradition says I won't claim you if you don't want me to. You have to make the choice. And there it was, the decision. He could say no, play it safe, and try to find his way back to some version of his old life. Or he could jump into the unknown with someone who had been his enemy just a few days before. Jake thought about his sister and the promise he had made himself after she died, to try and make the world a little less harsh and a little more kind, to do what was right even when it was hard. This felt right in some way. Right. Even though it was scary and impossible, he finally said, I need time. I really need to know what this means. Not just for us, but for everyone else too. Rivara nodded slowly, and he could see that she was disappointed, but also getting it. Of course. This is a lot to ask. I will wait. She was about to turn away when Jake grabbed her hand. She turned around, shocked. No, he said. I told you I needed time. There is a difference. She smiled a little, which was the first real smile he'd seen from her. It changed the way she looked, making her look younger and less like a strict queen, and more like a woman who had found something unexpected. Take your time, she said softly. I'm not going anywhere. Davis was watching them from across the bunker with a look of total disbelief. Jake caught his friend's eye and saw him slowly shake his head and say, You're crazy. He might have been, but when Jake looked at Rivara and saw the hope in her eyes, he thought that maybe crazy was just what this war-torn world needed. The 10th day was the first sign of trouble. Davis ran into the bunker, breathing hard and looking pale. We're moving. A lot of it. Both sides. Jake picked up his gun. How many? Krell troops are moving west, maybe a full squad. There are human forces coming from the north. They're working together. Jake, they are working together to find us. Rivara stood up, her hand going to the weapon Jake had given her without thinking. They know I'm still alive. Jake added, and they know I'm with you. He had been expecting this, but he had hoped it would take longer. How long do we have? An hour, maybe less. They moved quickly. Tyler and the other members of the squad picked up as many supplies as they could. Jake helped Rivara put on armor they had found at a destroyed Krell outpost. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Where should we go? Tyler winced as he moved his pack to his hurt shoulder and asked. Jake took out a map and looked at it with a flashlight. The wastelands. 20 miles to the east. There are only ruins and radiation out there. No one watches it because there's nothing to protect, Davis said. There's nothing worth protecting because everything is dead. Yes, that's right, which is why it's great for hiding. They left the bunker in the dark, walking one by one through the debris. Jake could hear engines behind them, which meant that searchers were getting closer. His heart raced as they ran through the skeletal remains of buildings, staying low and using every shadow. For the next 3 weeks, I ran and hid all the time. They mostly moved at night and slept in shifts during the day in whatever shelter they could find. Old subway tunnels, parking garages that have fallen down, and warehouses that have burned down. Anywhere that might keep you safe. But the hunters kept going. Jake quickly understood that this wasn't just about finding them. This was all about making sure Rivara never got back to her throne, and it was about making sure he paid for what he did. It was a rainy night near the old factory district when the first real fight broke out. When they were crossing an open area, plasma fire lit up the night. For Krell assassins jumped off the roofs. Davis yelled contact and shot back. Jake saw Rivara move, and for the first time, he saw her true self. Not only a queen, but also a fighter. She moved quickly and smoothly, like water, and her sword flashed in the rain. She killed 2 assassins before they even knew what was going on. Her movements were exact, deadly, and terrifyingly beautiful. But there were more on the way. Jake shot at muzzle flashes to protect his squad as they ran away. Tyler fell down and a plasma bolt hit his leg. Jake grabbed him and pulled him up, while Rivara fought off 3 more attackers on her own. They got to an old maintenance tunnel and closed the door behind them. Tyler was hurt, but still alive. There was a cut on Rivara's shoulder, and purple blood was staining her armor. She didn't seem to care much. Are you okay? Jake asked her. She nodded and looked at her gun. They will send more. I understand. Rivara cleaned Jake's rifle that night, while he took care of Tyler's leg in the dark of the tunnel. Davis shook his head as he watched her work. Davis said in a low voice, I've seen a lot of things in this war, but watching the enemy queen take apart a human rifle while we tend to our wounded, that's different. Rivara looked up at him. Your weapons are not very effective. There are too many moving parts, but I guess it works well enough. Davis really did laugh. Yeah, but if you drop your plasma guns too hard, they tend to blow up. That is a mistake in the design that we are fixing. Jake thought it was silly. sitting here talking about weapons with the enemy like they were comparing cars. But that's what the last few weeks had done. Davis and the team had seen what Jake saw. Rivara wasn't a bad person. Like them, she was just trying to stay alive. Next came the human kill teams. 3 days later, they were looking for supplies at an abandoned medical station when the attack happened. Jake knew right away what they were doing. Special forces were the soldiers' command sent when they wanted to kill someone without anyone knowing. Jake saw them coming through a broken window and realized they weren't trying to catch us. Kill us all. Your own people, Rivara said as she checked her ammo. Does that not bother you? Yes, it bothers me. But I made my choice. The fight was very bad. These weren't normal soldiers. They were professionals, trained killers who knew all of Jake's tricks. He saw Rivara take down 3 of them, moving through the building like a ghost. But there were too many of them. A grenade went off, and Jake was thrown against a wall. He heard a ringing in his ears. He could see one of the soldiers aiming at Rivara's back through the smoke. She didn't see him. I didn't know he was there. Jake moved without thinking about it. He jumped in front of them just as the soldier shot. It felt like a truck hit me. His chest was filled with heat and pain. He heard Rivara scream his name and saw her spin and kill the soldier in one smooth motion. He was on the ground, and she was above him with her hands on his chest. The pain was so bad it felt like fire was spreading through his body. He tried to breathe, but he couldn't get enough air. No, Jake, Rivara said, her voice breaking. Stay with me. Please stay with me. He wanted to tell her it was okay, that he had made his choice, and that she was worth it. But the words wouldn't come out. The world was getting darker, and the sounds were getting quieter. He saw her face last, with tears streaming down her silver scales as she screamed for help. Everything hurt when Jake woke up. He felt like someone had put a hot iron on his chest. He tried to get up, but he quickly regretted it. Did not move. Rivara's voice was sharp and commanding. He turned his head and saw her sitting next to a medical bed. They were in a small, clearly temporary medical facility. Davis was there too, along with an older woman in a white coat that Jake didn't know. What happened? Jake was able to croak out. You took a plasma bolt that should have killed you, the woman said as she looked at the monitors. You've been out for 3 days. Your friend here has stayed by your side the whole time. Jake turned to Rivara. She looked awful, tired, and her eyes were red. She had been crying. He had never seen her cry before. You idiot, she said, her voice shaking. You dumb ass. Why did you do that? Jake said simply, I couldn't let you die. So you chose to die instead? At the time, it seemed like a good idea. She made a noise that was both a laugh and a cry. People, you're all crazy. Yes, probably. The doctor left so they could be alone. Davis followed, but not before giving Jake a look that said they would talk later. After that, it was just the 2 of them. Rivara's hand found his, and her cool scales touched his warm skin. I thought I had lost you. I thought you were gone when you fell, and I saw the wound. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Jake Morrison. She leaned in closer, her golden eyes full of fire. During these weeks, I have seen you lead your men wisely. I have seen you protect people you didn't know, both from our world and yours. I have seen you give up everything for what you think is right. She stopped, and I've come to a conclusion. I said I was claiming you because it was the right thing to do. But that wasn't the whole story. Jake's heart was racing, and it wasn't just because of his injuries. What's the whole truth? I love you, you crazy person. Your strong sense of right and wrong is great. I love how you really see people, no matter what kind of animal they are. When things are at their worst, I love how you tell bad jokes. She spoke in a whisper. And when I thought you were dying, when I held you and felt your life fading, I knew that I couldn't live in a world without you. Jake looked at her and thought about what she said. 3 weeks ago, she was a bad guy. She was here now, telling him she loved him, and the crazy thing was that he felt the same way. In the middle of all the running, fighting, and bleeding together, she had become the most important person in his life. Yes, he said. She blinked. Yes. You asked me to be your bonded partner. Yes, I said. But you said you needed time. I had time. It looks like 3 days. He held her hand tightly. Do you want to know what I was thinking when that plasma bolt hit me? I thought I couldn't let you die. Not because you're a queen, not because of politics or strategy, but I couldn't stand the thought of you not being in the world. He was able to smile weakly. Yes, I'm saying yes. No matter what that means or what happens, I'm with you. She kissed him then, and it was nothing like he thought it would be to kiss an alien. It was just right, like two pieces of a puzzle that finally fit together. Davis was standing in the doorway, trying not to smile when they finally pulled apart. Okay, he said. Does this mean we won't be going back to the army anytime soon? Jake laughed, which hurt, but he didn't care. No, I don't think so. That's good, because I just heard the Krell Military Council is offering a prize for the Queen, and Human Command has put a bounty on all of us. Davis smiled. We're now the most wanted people in the galaxy. Great, Jake said under his breath. But when he looked at Rivara and saw the hope in her eyes, he knew he wouldn't change a thing. They would figure it out. Somehow, together. The neutral station circled a dead moon that was between human and Krell space. It was old, built when the two species first met and things went wrong. It was mostly empty now, only used for rare prisoner exchanges or emergency talks. But it had one thing Jake needed, a powerful broadcast array that could reach both sides of the war. The hardest part was getting there. 2 more weeks of running, hiding, and fighting off hunters from both sides. Jake's chest wound still hurt, but he could move again. Rivara had only just left his side, and he had seen her checking on him all the time, as if she was afraid he would pass out. They were now in the control room of the station, looking at the equipment for broadcasting. Davis was in charge of controls, and his fingers were flying over buttons he didn't really understand. Tyler stood guard at the door. The rest of the team stayed behind to keep an eye on their escape route in case things went wrong. Are you sure about this? Davis asked again, not for first time. Jake looked at Rivara. She was wearing her real royal armor, which they had found in a secret stash that she knew about. It shone silver and gold, making her look like a queen. He was still in his dirty, patched-up combat gear, standing next to a royal soldier. Jake said, No, but we would do it anyway. Rivara stepped up next to him and took his hand. There's no going back once we start this broadcast. Our two peoples will both know. The results will be bad. I know that MY Council will try to kill me. Your military will call you a traitor for all time. I know that too. She held his hand tightly. Then why do this? We could run away. Find a faraway place where neither side can find us. Live quietly. Jake thought about it. He wanted it. Wanted to just leave with her and forget about the war. But he thought about his sister and all the people who are still dying every day because the two sides can't stop fighting. About kids growing up without parents, cities burning down, and futures ruined. He said, nothing changes if we run. The war goes on. There are more deaths. And maybe, just maybe, we can stop that. Rivara nodded slowly. You really think two people can change history? I think we should give it a shot. Davis cleared his throat. Okay, we're all set. I've turned up the signal to its highest level. This is going to go to every ship, every planet with receiver, and every comm station. Someone will probably try to jam us or blow the station up in space in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Jake said again. Make sure they count. They were in front of the camera. Jake's heart was racing. He had been shot with plasma, fought assassins, and almost died many times. But being here, about to talk to billions of people, was somehow scarier. The light turned red. They were alive. Rivara was the first to speak, and her voice was clear and strong. I am the Krell Empire's Queen Rivara. I'm sorry if you thought I died 3 weeks ago. I'm still alive. Jake could almost feel the shock wave going through the galaxy. The queen who was dead spoke. She went on, I didn't die in that crash by accident. My own war council turned against me. They ruined my ship because I had the nerve to talk about peace. Because I wouldn't let this war take another generation of our young. She stopped. I have proof that they betrayed me. Names, messages, and proof of their plot. And I'm sending it all out now. Davis pressed another button. Files started to come out, including recordings and documents that would ruin a dozen high-ranking Krell officials. The proof was damning and couldn't be denied. Jake then spoke. Jake Morrison is my name. I am a lieutenant in the Terran Federation Army. I found Queen Rivara dead in that crashed ship 3 weeks ago, and I made a decision. I saved her life. He could picture how people on other worlds would react. Anger, rage, and confusion. Jake went on, I know what you're thinking. That I'm a traitor. That I let down all of humanity. You might be right. But here's what I've learned in the last 3 weeks. The enemy we've been told to hate, she's not that different from us. She is bleeding. She is in pain. She cares about her people just like we care about ours. Rivara spoke again. Lies on both sides have fueled this war. We have been taught to think of each other as monsters. But Lieutenant Morrison showed me that people can be very kind. He put everything on the line to save someone he was supposed to hate. That is not what a monster would do. Jake said, We're not asking you to forget 3 years of war. We're not asking you to forget what you lost. But we do want you to think about the possibility that there's another way to move forward. Then Rivara did something that made Jake's heart stop. She reached out and took his hand in front of billions of people. I am claiming Lieutenant Jake Morrison as my bonded mate according to the old ways of my people. This is the highest honor in our culture, and only warriors who show bravery beyond measure can get it. She looked at him, and Jake saw nothing but certainty in her golden eyes. He has shown himself to be worthy 1,000 times, and I choose him freely and without hesitation. The galaxy was probably going crazy right now. Human and Krell were connected. It had never happened before, was impossible, and was crazy. I know what this looks like. Jake said, his voice calm even though his heart was racing. I know that people on both sides will say this is a trick, a stunt, or propaganda. But it isn't. It is real. If a human soldier and a Krell queen can look past everything that separates us, then maybe our people can too. Rivara said, The War Council wanted me dead because I wanted peace. But I won't be quiet. I am taking back my throne. As queen, my first act will be to suggest that the Terran Federation and I start formal talks about peace. No conditions. No tricks. Just honest talks between two people who are sick of dying. Jake looked at the camera. I'm asking the leaders of the Federation to agree. I'm asking every soldier, civilian, and person who has lost someone in this war to think about what we're offering. A chance. Just a chance to end this. Rivara said, This war has taken enough. Now is the time to do something new. It's time to pick hope over hate. The broadcast stopped. Davis had turned it off right at the 5-minute mark, just before the jamming signals would have hit them. No one said anything for a moment. Then Tyler laughed, and it sounded a little crazy. Well, we really did it now. There's no way to come back from that. Jake said, I never meant to come back. The answer came back faster than I thought it would. Messages started coming in by the hour. Some were just what Jake thought they would be. Death threats, calls for their execution, and anger from hardliners on both sides. But there were more. Messages of encouragement. From soldiers who were sick of fighting. From parents who had lost their kids. From people who just wanted the killing to end. A human admiral named Patterson, who Jake had never heard of, sent a message in code. He was ready to talk. Not officially yet, but open to hearing it. Rivara's supporters on the Krell side started to move. Generals who had been quiet about the corruption in the War Council spoke up. People who weren't in the military went out into the streets and called for peace talks. The proof she gave made it impossible for the War Council to keep their position. It didn't happen right away. It wasn't magic. The hardliners fought back hard, tried to make them look bad, and said it was all a big hoax. But things had changed. The talk had changed. Jake was still wearing his combat gear 2 weeks later when he found himself in a negotiation room. It was all he had. There were human diplomats across the table from him, and they looked at him like he was an alien. Rivara stood next to him, looking regal and calm. With her loyal followers behind her point, one of the human diplomats said, This has never happened before. Yeah, Jake said, but maybe that's what we need. Something that has never happened before. The talks were hard. It would take more than a day to fix 3 years of war. There were problems with land ownership, war crimes to deal with, and reparations to work out. But they were having a conversation. Not shooting, but talking. Months went by. Jake and Rivara became symbols, even if they didn't want to. The human soldier and the alien queen who chose love over war. It was good propaganda for both sides, but Jake knew it was more complicated than that. They always had to deal with resistance. People trying to kill them, political games, and people trying to break them up. But they had been through worse things together. Jake stood on the observation deck of the peace station they had built one night, looking up at the stars. As always, Rivara joined him. "Do you ever wish you hadn't done it?" she asked softly. "That day you saved me?" Jake thought about his past life as a simple soldier. Then he thought about all the things that had happened since then. The running, the fighting, and the craziness. But also the hope. The peace that is slowly coming. The things that are changing on both sides. "No," he said honestly. "Never." She leaned on him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. Being with someone so different still felt strange at times. But it also felt good. Rivara said, "My people have a saying that the smallest spark can start the biggest fire. We have definitely started a fire. Yes, but maybe it's a kind of fire that warms instead of burns." They could see ships from both sides docking below them through the station windows. People from all walks of life, including diplomats, soldiers, and civilians, came together for the peace talks. It was a mess and hard to understand, and it was probably going to fail 100 times before it worked. But they were giving it their all. That was more than anyone had done in 3 years. Jake thought about the time when he was on the crashed ship and chose to save her. It seemed easy at the time. Now he knew that it had been the most important choice he had ever made, not just for him, but for millions of other people in the galaxy. Do you know what's funny? Jake asked, "I just wanted to do the right thing, help someone who needed it. I never meant to start a peace movement, get close to an alien queen, or become a symbol." Rivara smiled. "You are special because of that, Jake Morrison. You didn't do it for fame or glory. You did it because it was the right thing to do. That is real honor. The war wasn't over yet. Peace was weak and not certain. There would be problems and setbacks in the future. But for the first time in 3 years, both sides chose hope over violence. And it all started because a soldier from Texas couldn't leave someone who needed help.